In this video, we're going to study carbohydrates. All carbohydrates share the same empirical formula, composing of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, having two hydrogens per carbon and oxygen, and this structure can be repeated multiple times. The carbon and hydrogen covalent bonds hold much of the energy, and this is why carbohydrates are used for energy storage. Examples of carbohydrates are starch in plants, sugars, common sugars, glycogen that we store in our liver. Let's look at the basic or simplest sugars, which are the monosaccharides. Monosaccharides are the monomers of carbohydrates, and they can have 3 carbons such as glyceraldehyde, 5 carbon sugars such as ribose or deoxyribose, and you remember these sugars from the structures of RNA and DNA, ribose being part of RNA and deoxyribose part of DNA. And the main difference, or the only difference between these two sugars is that deoxyribose is missing an oxygen. That's why it's called deoxyribose. 6 carbon sugars are also very common. Glucose, for instance, is the base of the energy metabolism, and its isomers, fructose and galactose, are also very common. Disaccharides are used for transportation, for transporting energy and not transported in the form of glucose, which can be used by almost any cell. Plants, for example, transport sugars in the form of sucrose, and that's why we use a stable sugar. Lactose is used for transporting sugars in milk. And as you remember from the previous sections, forming polymers requires taking out a molecule of water. Polysaccharides, such as starch, which is found in plants, and glycogen found in animals, is formed by combining these monomers together by dehydration reactions. In this case, we're talking about alpha glucose. Note that alpha glucose has a hydroxyl on the bottom, and this is going to be different from beta glucose, which we're going to see in a second. The other example of a polysaccharide is cellulose, which forms very strong fibers and is the main component of the cell wall of plant cells. This polysaccharide is formed also by glucose, but this is a different isomer of glucose. This is beta glucose, and you can see now the hydroxyl is on the top. Beta glucose combines and forms these long chains of polysaccharides that gives the strength that is very particular to cellulose. It is important to not confuse carbohydrates with hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons only have carbon and hydrogen. An example of a hydrocarbon is where you put as gas or gasoline in your car. It's very different from a carbohydrate such as sugar that you'll find in your soda.